Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm JJ Flizanes, your empowerment strategist and producer. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about the Genius Zone. It's Gay Hendricks' most recent book. This is his third time on the show, and I'm looking forward to bringing this information to you. What I love about this newest book is its attention to receiving and creativity. And for those of you that have been following my podcast for a while, you know that that is the cornerstone of law of attraction. And so our ability to receive and to allow ourselves to receive and to use and be and feel and have our creativity is an important aspect of our evolution, expansion, and honestly, joy in life. That's how we get to feel better more, is to allow more in. And that's what today's conversation is all about. Over the years, Gay Hendricks has more and more leaned into committing to higher and higher quantities of time in his Genius Zone. And now he calls it the Genius Spiral, because it's not a box. And you'll hear us talk all about this, but I just wanted to cap on last week's show, the 7 traits of highly successful people, and bring it into this week's episode and just remind you that if you're someone who you often think, when am I going to do this? When am I going to be able to have more money, have more time, feel more free, feel more joy? You know, we're not getting any younger, and that's not to put scarcity of time into your path. It's to really just examine how much time do we waste in resistance. So if you're out there and you're someone who wants to spend more time in your Genius Zone and you're committed to that and you want some support in living that, in expressing that, in monetizing that, I have about 6 or 7 more spots left in the Inner Circle Mastermind. And if you go to jjsinnercirclemastermind.com, it's just an application to jump on a call. And one of the things that I'm definitely wanting to emphasize for 2022 is the idea of commitment. Commitment to yourself, commitment to your genius, commitment to your joy, and commitment to allowing. So if any of that sounds good for you, go to jjsinnercirclemastermind.com, check it out, fill out an application, and let's hop on a call. 2022 is going to be about commitment because it's where things are going. And I'm looking forward to helping and supporting those who want to expand more into their genius and allow more of everything they want into their lives. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Gay Hendricks. Welcome, everybody, to the show, and welcome back, Gay Hendricks. Today, we're going to be talking about his newest book, The Genius Zone. If you are listening to this on the podcast, know we did do a video. You can come over to jjflizanes.tv to see that video. And if you're finding us here on YouTube, know that I have a podcast. You can click below, download it, take it with you. You don't have to sit here and watch us talk to each other. So lots of things, options for you in terms of convenience. So The Genius Zone, welcome back to the show, Gay.
Well, thank you, JJ. Great being with you again.
So as I stated to you before we hit record, I, first of all, want everyone to buy the book. So if you haven't already, please buy The Genius Zone. If you have The Big Leap or you've been following me for any amount of time, or if you've come to a live event or in my Inner Circle membership or you're in my mastermind, you know that we work with The Big Leap all the time. The upper limit is a very common term that you have created, and you've created a movement in the world with that work. And this book is taking that to the next level and continuing the conversation that got started in The Big Leap. So I want to make sure that we address things that maybe aren't even in the book, things that have come up after the book. I know that for you, looking at like the mega issue. So the question on the table is, what do you think the mega issue is that people struggle with?
I think it has a lot to do with the inability to receive fully. I think at the heart of a lot of our issues that we shouldn't be focusing on solving some problem in the past so much as we should be focusing on growing our ability to receive something in the present. Now, naturally, the experiences of the past, painful experiences, cause people to, kind of shrink back and not believe in themselves. But really what makes the change is the shift in the willingness to receive now, regardless of what happened way back there. And one of the things that, The Big Leap came out about 12 years ago, and then the Genius Zone just came out a couple of months ago. And so one of the things that the Genius Zone is about are things that I figured out after The Big Leap was written, I would have probably put them in The Big Leap, but it took me a while to kind of integrate the things in The Big Leap and then see where the next thing had to go. And the Genius Zone has a lot of details about how to grow your ability to live in your genius zone. You know, The Big Leap is about how to get into it, and the Genius Zone is to how to stay there and elegantly live there so you don't stress yourself out with your goals, but you allow them to come to you. And that's a point that I really want to emphasize, because one of the big things that I see lacking in many people is they work real hard and they put things out, but they don't do the equivalent work on growing their ability to receive. And that's so essential. So I spend a lot of my time in my work with people finding out where they're limiting themselves and helping them put some new programming in that says, basically, I commit to growing my genius every day of my life. I think that's the new commitment that people are making that allows them to get out from under their upper limit and also open themselves to receiving to the max. I keep harping on receiving because if you think about it, all day long, you're in the act of giving and receiving with something very natural that's occurring 20,000 times a day, which is your breathing. So you're breathing in, you're taking in oxygen, and then you're breathing out CO2, and the plants around you, that's what they live on. And so you're feeding the flowers with your out breath, and you're receiving the gift of nature on the in breath. So everything in life comes down to the extent to which you're giving and the extent to which you're receiving. And instead of focusing on trying to unhook yourself from past problems, I want everybody to put the equivalent amount of energy into growing their ability to receive whatever it is in the present, like particularly just general positive energy. You can call it, when it's very refined positive energy, you could call it love. And if the person delivering your mail just says to you, hey, nice new hat you've got, those are both types of positive energy coming in. And the question is, how open am I to receiving positive energy fully? Am I open only 10%? I remember one time walking down the street, Katie and I were walking down the street in Boulder, Colorado, with a woman, a fellow therapist who was more of a friend of Katie's. I didn't know her very well, but in just being around her for an hour or two, I found myself liking her. And I said to her, I really appreciate you for, and she broke in and said, why am I suddenly suspicious? And, so I was going to say, I really appreciate the way you had laid out your living room in your apartment. It looks so friendly. So that was they're going to be the end of my sentence, but something about delivering an appreciation frightened her. And so a lot of us have as much resistance to receiving positive energy as we have to fully expressing our positive energy. To me, the full expression of positive energy is when we're busy growing our own business, our own genius business, whatever that business is, whether it's a relationship or a business or a sport, but growing your genius is one aspect of living. Growing your ability to receive is profoundly important, because just like you can only love another person to the extent that you love yourself genuinely, you can really only serve another person. In other words, you can only inspire other people, not through your words, but through your living example. So the moment you open up to expressing more of your genius, the more it automatically serves the people around you. And it doesn't help the people around you if you keep your genius hidden, because stymied creative potential drives a lot of people to criticize other people and to be sick and have accidents. Stifled creative potential is one of the biggest forces in nature, because human beings are profoundly creative. And our job here is to express the fineness of our creativity, what I call your genius. And if we hold back on that, that causes problems that ricochet up and down the system.
I actually recorded a show this week, as we're recording this right now, and your show's coming out probably in another week or two. So it's going to be pretty close together. And it was the 7 traits of highly successful people. And the 4th trait had to do with allowing and creating space for creativity. And I even referenced the Genius Zone book and how much time you spend in creativity, because it's like our life force. And I don't know if you talked about this in the book or if this is some other place I remember this conversation, but it's like it's taking back that childlike awe and wonder and those questions and the how can I and the possibility seeking and the openness that we as adults tell ourselves we can't do because it's not practical, it doesn't make money, it's not responsible. And it's like now we're getting to the point where this is a necessary component to add back into our adulthood for all aspects of our life. And I'm going to turn my camera. It's going to be weird for those who are watching this, but and for those of you who can't see it, I want to show you that on a board here, I expand in success and abundant success and love every day as I inspire those around me to do the same. Like ever since from the big leap, I wrote that years ago, and it's literally been on a board next to me all the time, because it's why I loved, and I said this on our very first conversation, why we upper limit ourselves. This is our 3rd show for anyone who's listening for the first time. This is our 3rd show together. And on the first show, I said, the reason why I was really interested in your work, how it really impacted me more when I read it the second time, was because I teach law of attraction, and law of attraction is about receiving. It's about the frequency of where you're vibrating emotionally, and then being able to allow that in. And what was missing for a lot of people in that conversation, because some people say, well, okay, so I'm just supposed to feel good. Although many people don't even know what that's like. I said, feel good. They're like, well, how do you do that? I'm like, feel good. Like you need to know how to feel good. Okay. Well, that's a whole nother conversation. But what the big leap did for me was to give people a more visual idea of a temperature gauge of how much, like I felt like the upper limit conversation and the big leap really started that, like, oh, the reason why I can't allow in more is because I only think I deserve so much. And this is where I get to challenge myself to receive more. And how do I do that? And what do I do? And so your work, and then this book, I love that the Genius Zone has moved into the Genius Spiral. Again, allowing for that creativity to not set you in a box that is stagnant, because creativity is not stagnant. It's constantly growing. It's constantly changing. To me, it's from a spiritual perspective, creativity is your connection to source energy and your higher being. And it's like having leveraged, there's no thought that hasn't been thought before. But we are each guided in ways that only we know, but we have to have a connection to that. And that openness, that trust, that exploration, that allowing ourselves to chase a dream, to start a business, to care about a relationship, where I finished the book last night. Because I was going between your book and Undoctored from Dr. William Davis before these interviews. And I told you when I got your book that I was going to do it. I was going to do all the exercises. And so I committed to that and I did that. But what I love when you got to the end of the deathbed markers to me were so profound and you're such a romantic. And I agree with you. Like when I read one of your deathbed markers, I was like, that's exactly what I wanted. That was a marker of success for me, that I knew that I would always get the relationship of my dreams. And I wasn't in one when I had that thought. And I didn't have that experience when I knew in my bones, that's what one of the most important things of my life would be. And here I am now in it, just like you're in it. So I thought the deathbed marker was a way for us to really shortcut what's really important to us and where are we spending our time? And is it really about money in the bank? And sometimes it is, but is that really what it's about? And how do we get to the place where we allow our creativity to take us on this journey? What I love is your story of being able to commit little by little over time, more time in the Genius Zone, more time in the Genius Zone, to the fact where you're either 90% or 100% now in your Genius Zone, and what that has been like for you. Can you speak to that for people? in terms of that transition and how long you've been currently living in the largest time frame of your genius zone, and what miracles and or inspiration and or creative expressions have come from that?
Well, I can tell you that all my dreams have come true. And the 5 big wishes I had for my life, number 1 was to have that kind of relationship with a woman with whom I could grow and change over the years. And I'm happy to report that that worked so well that we are right this month having our 40th wedding anniversary. And
congratulations.
yeah, 40th wedding anniversary. We got married in October of 1981, and it led to 10 books co-authored together and many visits to Chicago to be on Oprah and 30 trips around the world. And so all my dreams have come true. My second dream that I stated for my life before it actually happened was I wanted to learn how to live in a state of completion so that there was nothing ever unsaid of importance or that I had not listened to of importance with any of the human beings that I care about. And that took me a while to do. I had to clean up a bunch of stuff, but once I got it cleaned up, I've had, at least 30 years or so of living in a state of completion where I really haven't had any secrets or holdbacks or things I haven't been willing to listen to. And so it makes for a very easeful kind of life. The third thing I wanted, that dream has come true. At the time, I mostly wrote textbooks and, that were read by maybe 500 clinical psychology students a year. And one day I had this, I've always been passionate about psychology and spirituality. I had this realization that really the most important thing for me was to find the most practical things that could change the most people's lives. If I was going to play the game, I wanted to find the core fundamentals. And I wanted to explain them to people in a way they could understand them. And so my third dream wish for my life was I wanted to learn how to write from my heart so I could speak to the largest numbers of people. And, it took some years, but through the great blessing of media and Oprah and 500 other shows like hers and writing books and things, it became possible to affect the lives of millions of people rather than just 500 clinical psychology students a year. So that dream really came true, much bigger than I could have ever possibly imagined, because when I first hatched the idea, there were no Oprahs or there weren't any really even self-help books. They weren't a genre yet. And so I a lot of times think we dream the reality into being just by the power of the commitment that's behind it. My fourth big dream for my life that came true was I wanted to learn as much as I could and experience as much as I could about the creator force in life, whether you call it God or spirit or whatever the word for it is you use, but that animating function of life that's the same in me as it is in you. And it would be the same in me even if I'd grown up the next door house. And so I've learned as much as I possibly could about it. So I feel complete. I'd like to learn more as I get older, but that feels complete to me in the sense that I'm learning as much about it as I have the capacity to learn. The fifth thing that I set up for my life was wanted to learn how to savor the moments of my life, just being here. And at the time I had that goal, I probably have spent about 10% of my time in my zone of genius and probably about 10% of my time in my body, actually being where I was. I was, that great quote from John Lennon, life is what's going while you're busy making other plans. Well, I was always busy making other plans. And so I gradually started correcting those things and expressing those things in myself. And it probably took me to the end of the last century, to get from that 10% place up to the 100% place. So, you could say, well, it took you 20 or 30 years. That's a long time. But on the other hand, I've since have more than 20 years of living in the state of all my dreams having come true and coming true by the day, and always expanding and letting more positive energy into my life. And doing that 100% of the time, I can tell you, it feels great. And, like, just to give you a practical example, my wife and I bought this house in 2001, and we started living in it seriously the winter of 2001 into 2002, I think. So we've been here basically 20 years. And neither one of us have spoken a critical word to the other person while we've lived in this house. And so think of that for a moment, to live in a space where there's no negativity. And what that results in is being able to live in one's creativity full time. So both of us have been able to live uninterruptedly in the flow of our creativity, because we're not going around interrupting it by criticizing and blaming and those kind of things. So while it might take you some years to make those commitments come true, you've really got to start somewhere. So I encourage you this very day to make a commitment, just like I commit to bringing forth more and more of my genius every day in my life. That's a simple commitment. But if you're willing to line up your heart and your head and get sincere about that commitment, I can promise that you'll start seeing things around yourself that you just weren't seeing today. Like I talk a lot in the new book, in the Genius book, about what I call genius moments. And they're happening all the time. I wouldn't have believed that 50 years ago, but now I have unshakable proof of it. I have the sweetest inbox in town, I think, because I've written The Big Leap and Genius Zone and books like that. I get people send me their big leaps all the time and appreciate me for the book, and because it helped them get over some illness they had, break through to some new level of making money. Like I just heard from one guy this month that was trying to sell his business for $50 million. And he did some big leap work, sold it for $54 million. So that's a practical thing. Having another $4 million is a good thing. You could give it to the charity of your choice or fund some cause that you believe in. But at least you got $4 million. And the only change that happened was he expanded his ability to receive and work directly on his ability to receive. So there's this quote that I use in the Genius Zone that says, if you bring forth what is within you, what is within you will save you. What is if you do not bring forth what is within you, what is within you will destroy it. And I got that. It's from the apocryphal Gospel of Thomas. That is one of the books that was originally considered part of the Bible, that they did some editing on the Bible at, I think, 400 AD or something like that, and trimmed out a lot of the things. And the Gospel of Thomas didn't make the cut. But it's got that great quote in it that I have seen the truth of that so many times in our counseling practice, because like I remember a woman, this brings my tears to my eyes to even think about it, a woman that had a tumor that she was trying to dissolve, is the word I'm looking for, but to dissolve through using versions of visualization. But it turned out to be nothing to do with visualization in a way. What it had to do was something she had never loved in herself, something that she'd been jury and judge, and judged herself for something that wasn't any of her responsibility. It was a semi-rape. But she was a nun at the time, and it had a great deal of charge. Mm-hmm. It's a body thing. It was something she hadn't learned to love and accept in her body. That's the way I think healing often happens. I would call it the hardest journey and the longest journey, is having 12 inches from your head to your heart. Because if you can get the power of your mind and the power of the heart, if you can get those things, you've got a super power that's much better than anything you'll see in a very loud IMAX, IMAX.
An IMAX movie?
Yeah. The thing that I was trying to remember the name of it, it was only yesterday. Dune. Dune. Yeah, it was a sci-fi thing. I don't like it. I did it, frankly, because my wife loved sci-fi, and it was a 2-hour movie, and
it was loud.
I took one for the team to be, but it was so incredibly noisy. I couldn't stand it. But one of the things I want to give you, though, is the main thing is that even that it's all about receiving ability. Receive ability, the ability of letting yourself be received. Let yourself be to the most you possibly can to receive the most amount you possibly can. So that's the big lesson. That's, I think, what we're trying to be, right now.
So in terms of, and I know that this is kind of a little bit in both of the books, or at least that's how I interpreted The Big Leap with the work that I do, because it gave people a reflection and a visual, like you're talking about visualization. In fact, and that's how I've helped people with your work, with Big Leap work, is once we find what it is and where we are with that, then I have walked people through a guided visualization and having them receive more, opening up to more, and giving them feedback and things they can think about and see in their mind, and feelings to feel, and also opening up their heart more and allowing it more in, and noticing what's coming for them, and being able to, again, create new neural pathways of possibly receiving. But that's in a guided visualization. So what would you say for the average person would be a couple, like, normal, like you said, like accepting a compliment, or not stopping somebody from giving you a compliment, or not telling them, oh, no, like receiving the compliment? Like, that's an easy thing that people can notice about themselves right now. If you had to like pick a couple more, what do you think they would be?
Well, one of them for sure is not willing to receive compliments. The great research psychologist John Gottman had a careful study way back in the 80s, I think it was, where 5 appreciations are what healthy relationships have going for themselves, instead of every appreciation negative thing. So in other words, 5 appreciations are what healthy relationships have, a 5-to-1 ratio of that. And at first, it was hard for us to even make one hard, because we were, this was when we were first started working with each other, in the early days of our relationship. But now, we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, because we hadn't had any things that go on now. Like, one of the most things that always happens, almost always, I tell Katie every day that I'm the luckiest person alive because I get to be her husband. And that's something that's just a fresh thing that I have to say when I see her. It's not a rote anything like that. It's just I see that aspect of her. And when I see that aspect of her, I have this certain feeling of gratitude. And it almost happens when I first see her every day. I get up in the morning, and so she sleeps in. So I often see her around 7:30. I'm a 4:00 guy. So, oh man, when I first see her, it's like electricity, and it has that feeling of I'm the luckiest person there could ever be in the life, just because I get to see her happen. So I didn't have that feeling at first. It took me a long time to just receive her love. It was there all the time. It was me that had to let things get through to me, just like I had how much money I could receive. And, so, as a matter of fact, the first bit of financial stuff we ever did, our first year together, we said to each other, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we had $1,000 that we just put somewhere like in a savings account and we never touched it? And that was the hardest thing, And yet suddenly once we had it, then we said, okay, wouldn't it be nice to have $10,000? And then wouldn't it be great to have $100,000? And then if you were at $1 million. And so at this point, we don't count the numbers so much anymore, but we just want a constant. Nowadays, it mostly goes into our nonprofit foundation because there's not much stuff we need anymore. But for a long time, we wanted to buy a house and all those kind of things. But we kept just opening up the receiver aspect to more and more love and appreciation.
No, I think that's very practical. I love that when we're looking at the book and the genius markers about the practical, measurable stuff, like what you just said. Some of your examples, I submitted my book to the publisher. I live with a loving partner. I have more in my bank account than I had last year. And I think that's a really simple and easy way for people to start. I think that there's like a balance. The balance is on one end, the simplicity of being able to receive more sounds pretty easy. The reality of it, though, is it's going to challenge people a little bit, and there's a commitment that has to be made to do it. And so when we're looking at how do I improve my life and how do I get what I want, it's the balance of it's a very simple answer. That what you have to do on the other side, though, is to commit to taking action moving forward and allowing more in. And at each level or at each situation, it may look or feel differently if you upper limit. But the bottom line is you keep looking forward, you keep making that goal, you keep putting out that desire, you keep acknowledging and using your creativity and dedicating yourself to something that is progressing you along versus, I like what you said in the beginning. You said it's not about necessarily going backwards into the past and like looking at all that stuff. There's some value to it, but it isn't where you want to spend the majority of your time because ultimately it doesn't teach you how to receive more. It may give you clarity about why you don't, but once you understand, when I work with people and we do core wound work, we're in and we're out. We get in, we get out because I just want to know what it is. And now we're going to go forward. And now we're going to figure out how to receive more. What's the block? Why won't you let it in? I love the no negativity and the affirmations. I would imagine that words are your love language. That would be true. I think that would be very true for you. It is for Doug. I mean, he's so good at it that he compliments himself. And it's not because I'm not doing it. He'll literally have a conversation with himself and say, well, that was a good job, Doug. And I'll watch him and hear him. And I'll say, did I miss something? Did I not acknowledge you for something? He's like, no, I'm good. I'm just having a conversation with myself, telling myself what a good job I did. I'm like, okay. Because his love language is words. But I love these small, simple steps. So if you haven't been living under a rock, and you haven't heard of The Big Leap yet, and you don't have it yet, please, everybody, make sure that's the first book you buy. And the second book you're going to get is The Genius Zone, and we've worked on this in different places in the work I do. Gay, talk to me about because what I love about also the end of The Genius Zone, and it's not like you're retiring and you're stopping, but I felt like your completion. I felt your completion of a path. And what's next for you?
Well, actually, I have 3 of my mystery novels in my Tibetan Lama private detective series and 3 in my Sir Errol Hyde mysteries that I haven't written yet. Then I also have my memoir that I'm working on. So I have 7 things in the pipeline. So I'm busy as all get out with my writing projects and doing interviews, and I also work with about 4 or 5 mentors. I mentor 4 or 5 people a year, mostly hot, young, entrepreneurial whiz kids in their 30s and 40s. Although a couple of them are older, but they're mostly young entrepreneurs. So I have a lot of fun mentoring people every year too. And now I'm going to go have a celebratory lunch with my magnificent mate of 40 years.
I love that. One more last question before we wrap up today, because I know you've had just such an important lifetime of work helping people. Are you guys doing any more work with people? Are you doing any more events or coaching or programs? Okay. So that's not off the table.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're doing a lot of them. We're in the middle of a couple right now, but we also have our first couples course that's live with real human beings in it. We're thrilled. It's already about half. It's not until February, but I think it's already about 20 couples already. There's only room for 30. So by probably Thanksgiving, there'll be a couples course with actual live people in it. We're very happy about that.
Is it here in Ojai?
Yes, it's at the Ojai Women's Club. Yeah.
Okay. Well, when Katie and I have our reflexology date next week, I'm going to have to talk to her about it because Doug and I love being involved in doing things like that. And I'd love to experience you guys working together. So, okay, great to know. And again, would people find out about that if they're interested at
Hendricks.com, Hendricks.com. Yep, that's where we go to do all that kind of thing. And we'd love to have you come check it out.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that link will be in the show notes. And again, everybody, it is the Genius Zone. It's also the Big Leap. Again, these are tools you need, not just for business, but for life, for love, for relationships, for health. They will help you in all ways. So please make sure to get your copy of Genius Zone and the Big Leap if you don't have it. Gay, thank you for your time today.
Thanks a lot, JJ.